Okay, good, ladies and gentlemen. We can come in closer here. So let's start the second to last block of discussion and of keynote speeches today. And we're actually going to talk about a very interesting, very close topic to my heart as well. We will be talking about S and ESG and the social aspects now. And we will kick off this block with two elevator speeches, as we call them, but it's essentially as a keynote as well, or maybe a shorter, punchy, energetic speech, no pressure for the speakers here. And we will start with András Puskás, Deputy CEO and CSO from the Magyar Bank Holding. So András, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Where is the wedding? So we're just waiting for that. So Dobrý den, Praha. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is András Puskás, Deputy CEO and CSO of Hungary's MBH Bank. My role is to provide strategic guidance on ESG matters, helping the financial group to align its operations with international sustainability standards and leading efforts to promote green finance. Thank you for the opportunity to share our views and efforts, as these are extremely exciting times for us. We just finalized the greatest bank merger in Hungary and in the Hungarian history 2 weeks ago, a triple merger that created the second largest banking group in Hungary. As most of you are aware, banks measure emissions under Scope 1, 2, and 3, where Scope 3 emissions include bank lending exposure as well. Financed emissions are typically the most difficult to calculate, but they are considered part of the financial institution's carbon footprint. When we talk about why this sector is critical to achieving a net zero carbon future, let's have a look at Bloomberg's estimate from 2021, which says that banks produce 700 times more emissions from loans than offices, as Max mentioned earlier as well. But we can find other calculations which are worse than the previous one. So we can agree on the fact that it's important for us to reduce both our own and indirect impact. There is a saying that goes, strength in numbers. Well, the responsibility that comes with this new position in the marketplace is very much felt, and it gives us added motivation and determination to think big and make a real difference. As I mentioned earlier, we just finalized the greatest bank merger in Hungarian history 2 weeks ago, a triple merger that created the second largest banking group of Hungary. MBH Bank is a market leader in several areas, including corporate lending, lending to SMEs, the leasing market, the agricultural and food business, the engaged in a wide range of money, capital market and investment activities. Our aim as a modern universal bank is to serve its retail, corporate and institutional clients with modern financial services and continuously expanding product range that are accessible to all. We firmly believe that we have a responsibility towards sustainability, firstly as a financial institution in our lending and investment practices, and secondly in our operations. We also believe that ESG needs to be integrated into business transformation, and we have taken this opportunity during our own transformation over the past 2 years, landing up to the completion of our triple merger. As part of our ESG journey, we ticked some important boxes last year. We set up an ESG and sustainability department to manage sustainability-related projects and processes in an integrated and cross-functional way. We have formulated our ESG strategy, integrating our existing operational initiatives from our rich heritage into a strategic framework. We have rapidly implemented several projects, including an updated risk strategy and fully embedding climate considerations into our risk management frameworks. We finished in the last month a project where we added ESG elements to the retail, SME and the large corporate credit risk management process to help manage MBH's portfolio from the ESG perspective. We believe it's necessary to quantify the various aspects of sustainability and to rate loan purposes and clients on this basis as soon as possible. During the project, the bank not only learned about the ESG readiness of its clients, but also developed the data to assess their ESG performance. This will help to expand lending for more responsible products and services. At the end of last year, we strengthened our ESG commitment by becoming a signatory to the UN Principles for Responsible Banking, which is very inspiring, and as it opens up new horizons and perspectives to help us see the bigger picture. Earlier this year, we launched our own net zero project to calculate our footprint, and as a next step, we plan to work hand in hand with the internationally recognized environmental organization to make the most innovative and environmentally accurate decision to reduce our footprint and to be a carbon neutral bank. I'm often asked what I think is most challenging on that path. At this point in time, it's probably the management on the immense amount of the data that is necessary for all the disclosures we have on our hands. That is why one of our key projects, which we have just launched, is to create a company-wide data pool that will enable us to meet these obligations for easily and at the same time provide our own top management with even better quality data for our decision making. We find that the social elements of the ESG are becoming more important after they played a secondary role to environmental factors for quite some time. Of course, we also place great emphasis on the E aspect, going paperless and as energy efficient as possible to reduce our ecological footprint and looking for smart ways to offset the remaining emissions using the SBTIs. We are significantly reducing our paper consumption year on year and implementing digital innovations at the same time to cut back even further. We are increasing the share of our environmentally friendly car fleet, installing hundreds of square meters of solar panels on our office buildings. This March, we planted the first 10,000 tree seedlings of our very own MBH forest. The next 10,000 trees planned for next spring, all with the joint efforts of around hundreds of our colleagues and ESG ambassadors. Social ESG topics may not be as easy to measure as environmental impact, but navigating how to move from simply net zero to net impact is an effort worth making. Society has always demanded that companies serve a social purpose and contribute to making the world a better place. Our strategy states that as a leading bank in Hungary, we are committed to the economic and social development of the country. Social factors are deeply seated in decision-making across all functions and processes of a company. How a company manages its relationships with its workforce, the societies in which it operates. They run across multiple areas of the business, from HR to finance and product design. It is crucial for the social considerations to be embedded in how business strategy is formulated. For example, the entire journey that comes with joining the Principles for Responsible Banking is extremely useful in that it forces us to take an impact-based approach to our business portfolio, to look at our activities through a magnifying lens and commit to achievable targets in the areas of most significant impact. We are at the beginning of this journey, but after the first few milestones, I'm confident that we will have new tools to improve our existing practices. But back to what we currently do, our bank's corporate social responsibility program covers a broad spectrum. Just a quick mention, our priority cases are support for the social disadvantaged by means of integration programs and direct assistance, education and development of financial awareness and digital literacy, and supporting Hungarian art and culture. MBH Bank has set itself the goal as establishing transparent external and internal operations supporting sustainability. It is essential for us to incorporate sustainability-related policies and rules into our corporate governance processes. We also believe that companies that are more focused on social purpose and corporate responsibility are more resilient through change. Therefore, in-house, we developed transparent career pathways to help employees achieve personal growth objectives. We have meaningful policies and programs in place that support diversity, equity, and inclusion. Externally, we develop products and services that will empower customers to adopt more sustainable consumption patterns. We rely on value-added partnerships and alliances that help us achieve our goals. Last but not least, we create and enforce transparent accountability mechanism. I'm across this quote from Ellen Key, which says the best way to predict the future is to create it. And I think it fits well in this context. In this spring, to create the future we aspire to, we will continue to invest in our people, in their skills, training, and development in our customers through product and service development and innovation, and of course in nature and our planet, for example, through our own biodiversity initiative, which is taking shape and will soon be launched. Let's all continue to invest in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, András, for the very informative presentation. And now we can move on to the next elevator speech, or a lift speech. Elevator speech. Good. Eryk, please. So we have Eryk Frontczak from Heavy Finance. And Eryk, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you for the possibility to give this elevator/lift speech in front of such a noble audience. I would like to begin my story with a little bit of a personal background. I have joined about 4 years ago the world of venture capital and private equity with one major motivation. I wanted to deploy capital in places where it can truly make a difference. During my tenure in one of the leading venture capital and growth equity funds in Poland, I saw exactly this. We invested in companies that with zero revenue throughout 1 year after our investment would achieve even 100,000 euros in monthly recurring revenue. Heavy Finance was exactly such a case. As an exemplary example, this marketplace connecting fintech, this marketplace connecting investors with farmers proved that the sector of agriculture requires innovation. About 6 months ago, I decided to join the company for the very same reason. I wanted to deploy capital where it can truly make a difference. Only this time, I didn't only want to generate returns to our investors, but also, and most importantly, to make a true difference for our environment. As I'm sure that everyone on this floor is aware, global emissions are unfortunately on the rise. I like to look at things in a granular way. It is quite surprising, I think, at least for me, that agriculture, a sector that is responsible for putting food on our table, contributes 1/5 of total emissions generated globally. It is the harsh reality that the sector that actually feeds us all, unfortunately, also significantly contributes to global warming. When we look at things in a more granular way, we see that apart from livestock, old equipment, overuse of fertilizers, and soil mismanagement are the key causes of the issue. Old equipment, as we can all imagine, unfortunately uses way too much fuel. Overuse of fertilizers that is not absorbed by the soil emits carbon nitride, which approximately emits over 800 million tons of greenhouse gases. When it comes to soil mismanagement, practices such as tilling approximately generate over 1.5 billion tons when it comes to carbon emissions. But there is a way, there is a solution for this issue. Old equipment can be replaced by new one, more efficient. Artificial fertilizer can be replaced by the use of organic one. And mismanagement when it comes to soil can be changed to more responsible soil management. And it's important to note that all of those practices not only are environmentally friendly, but also provide real quantifiable benefits for farmers themselves. Lower consumption of fuel means lower prices, lower bill when it comes to your gas bill. The lower use of fertilizers also contributes in significantly lower operational costs. And responsible soil management, for example, no-till farming, actually produces more healthier crops, which affects in healthier food for us all. Soil itself is actually a very interesting subject. The soil is yet untapped carbon sink pool. If we think about the European Union itself, the arable land can remove on a yearly basis more than 200 million tons of CO2. There is, however, one issue, a big one. This is the financial gap. European studies show that the financial gap within agricultural space is valued at least 18 billion euros. This is the gap that significantly hinders the development of the sector that is agriculture. So we created a solution. Heavy Finance, a borderless lending platform for farmers and investors. So far, since our inception, we have helped over 1,300 farmers, processing loans of total value exceeding 36 million euros. We are currently present in 5 markets: Lithuania, Latvia, Poland, Bulgaria, and Portugal. We have created products that create real financial incentives for farmers to adopt more sustainable practices, where farmers are benefited and rewarded for each ton of sequestered carbon. It is important to note that we have truly built a product that helps farmers, but also that delivers return to our investors. Heavy Finance platform currently have over 8,000 retail investors, over 150 organizations and small financial institutions, including family offices. On average, we have earned for our investors 13% in average interest. When you look at the timeline of our company, you can see few important milestones. First loan financed, first 10 million euro in financed loans, first institutional investor onboarded, introduction of green loans and carbon farming that supports adopting sustainable practices. But we are unsatisfied. We want more. And what we have realized is that in order to attract truly institutional capital, we need to adopt our product so that institutional capital, we need to adopt our product that is more familiar to institutional capital. And this is why I'm happy to announce Heavy Finance Article 9 Fund, a 50 million euro fund focused on sustainable agricultural loans, backed by a leading European institutional investor. Do you want to know more about it? Here is an exemplary case. Meet farmer Maciej, a young farmer, most importantly, a young entrepreneur, consistently increasing his revenue, increasing his arable land throughout the years. Farmer Maciej currently seeks a 60,000 euro loan that is supposed to help him to purchase a 20 hectare land, but also it's supposed to finance his no-till cultivator. Do you want to know the metrics? 60,000 euro loan, 13% interest, 36 months when it comes to payback periods, 63% loan-to-value ratio with collateral assets including heavy equipment and land. But most importantly, almost 2,000 tons of CO2 sequestered throughout 10 years. Thanks to farmers like this, thanks to Mr. Maciej, our funds will generate to our investors approximately 9.5% in IRR, but most importantly, will sequester or avoid at least 400,000 of greenhouse gases. We are a team of professionals with very mixed backgrounds, entrepreneurs, financial professionals with experience of managing over 1 billion euros in debt capital, soil scientists, data scientists. I'm here together with my colleague Rytis. I'm happy to speak with any individual, organization, or financial institution that is willing to learn more about our platform. Thank you very much, and I invite you to join our journey.
Thank you very much, Eryk. Really interesting, actually, on two fronts, to be honest, because one, very interesting, innovative way of investing, but also I'm really glad that you touched on agriculture. I feel like agriculture is not being discussed. We often talk about heavy industry and many other sectors, but actually agriculture and the potential of agriculture is amazing. It's really cool to see something innovative approach like that to it. So well done, and thank you so much for the elevator speeches. We will now move to the next panel discussion. If I can very kindly ask the speakers and the moderator to the stage. So we have the moderator, please. So Giulia Corinaldi, Director of Inclusive Economies at Thomson Reuters Foundation. Please, 1 second. And then we have Barbora Kotoun, Country Sustainability Manager at IKEA, Czech Republic, Hungary, and Slovakia. Marek Blaha, CEO of Affordable Housing at Česká, spořitelna. And Kęstutis, Kupšys, member of European Economic and Social Committee. So without any ado, I'll just give you the word, Giulia, and you can take it away. So enjoy the discussion.
Thank you, Julian. Thank you for having us here. And hello, everyone. I think we're heading to the end of the day, so we'll try to bring some energy to the room and also to bring back the S in the conversation. And I haven't been on a panel for actually 3-4 years in person. I've been hiding in the bushes a bit in the last year, trying to figure out what to do with my life. But then Linda called, and I feel like probably we are all in the same situation. You don't say no to Linda. You don't. There's not an option. But also I couldn't say no to Linda because my whole journey with the S has started with Linda and ICFC. We had this idea, coughing just before COVID in a bar, thinking we need to put the S back at the center of the conversation, and we need to bring together practitioners from lawyers to data providers to business and investors and NGOs. And so we started a working group with the PRI, Robert Kennedy Institute of Human Rights, White Kincaid's Refinitiv, and then we had a bigger group of partners, and today a lot of them were here, PRI, GRI, Rep Risk, that brought us into the journey. And really the mission was to debunk the myth that the S is too difficult to do, and so the paralysis that creates. And also an excuse. I think if in the panel before someone was saying, it's just an excuse not to get started. And that's a bit the feeling we had with the panel. And so today the question was, is the S a critical element for resilience? And I think with the panel we decided that altogether we can tell you, yes, it is. And that's it. But what we're going to discuss today is how, because that's where it gets complicated. And we know that. And we wanted to give you a bit of examples on how each of them are doing it from very different perspectives, and you'll see, which I've been fascinated to listen to before. From my perspective, on the S, I think, and bringing people to the center of the transformation, the industrial transformation we're trying to achieve. There are 3 big reasons why I think it makes it critical. One, I think, is the opportunity. So in the sense that in order to deliver some of the E metrics, take into account deaths that will deliver better e-metrics. So the World Benchmarking Alliance just showcased a report where board, where there's more gender balance, deliver better on all climate targets. So it's a positive for the climate as well. And the second reason is a mix of risk and opportunity. I think we have the opportunity to get it right. The industrial transformation, someone would call it a radical transformation, which we're all hoping for. But we have also the risk to getting it really wrong. And we should be learning from history on how leaving people behind has created fragility and instability in economic, like the UK, who transformed its economy during Thatcher and then had left huge chunk of the population behind, who created a lot of instability now with Brexit, etc. And then the answer is it will hit the bottom line of a lot of the companies trying to invest in the green economy, and it's already hitting the bottom line, not looking at the S. So looking at what's happening with the Uyghur region and solar panel, we know that 50% of polysilicon is coming from that region, and now with the very right ban on forced labor from the Uyghur region in the US, and it's coming in the EU, a lot of the material that we need in order to grow that those industry is blocked at the US port. So it's fundamental. And I'll stop talking, sorry, I think I took it too long. Okay. But I wanted to give a bit of energy on why we're here. And I'm going to move it to Marek. We were discussing, and you come from a very practical, today we talked a lot about indicator reporting, where you have a very practical perspective. Can you let us know why housing is such a pressing user in Europe, and how do you integrate social aspect to what you're doing on housing?
Sure. I was, for the last 5 years, I have been leading our retail business of the largest bank in Czech Republic, and obviously mortgages, it's massive. I mean, it's the whole market in Czech Republic is 1.7 trillion Czech crowns, which is roughly 70 billion euro. And this is, if you look on the, you are from the finance business, most of you, so if you look on the total household debts, that's around 60% of the portfolio. And when in 2021 we start modeling what will happen today, and we saw the prices of the real estate and the new limits of the National Bank and the growing rate of the interest rate, then we modeled and found out that 80% people will not be able to get a mortgage. And this is something how we were financing the affordability of housing. And for us, it's numbers, it's clients, it's the mortgages, but then you come to the social issue. What happens if 80% of the nation cannot afford to buy their own apartment, and there is no other way how they can solve their housing needs? And we say, okay, we need to talk to the government, because obviously this is a really painful social issue, and they should do something about it. And they say, you can get in the line, because if you talk to the government, there is already 1,000 people ahead of you, the agriculture people, the teachers, the doctors, everyone is telling do something. So we say, okay, maybe it's coming back to our roots, and we look into our history, and there is actually, it's a funny thing, 1925, the city saving bank, which is Česká spořitelna 100 years ago, decided to build their own quarter of the city. It's called spořitelna, and it's still working. It's on the east side of the Prague, and it's a fantastic district. So we found out actually that 100 years ago the bank has built a whole city district because they wanted to keep the social coherence. And we say, okay, let's start doing the same thing. So we approach municipalities, we approach developers, and told them we would like to start buying our own apartments and to provide it by a rent that is affordable. That means, according to OECD, maximum 40% of the income of the household should be spent on the rent, and the rents at least should be 20% under the market to give it some value. And currently, we actually this morning we signed a contract for another 150 units. So it's a special day for me, because that's demanded 1 year of work. And currently we have 400 units under development that will be offered to hospitals and to teachers in Prague to maintain the sustainable development of Prague, because we found out if the people are paid same in the public sphere in Prague and in the outskirts of the country, then obviously they will move out of the big cities, because for the same salary they get much better life standard. So if you want to keep the big cities working, you really have to do something. So we started to build our own portfolio, and when we approached the hospitals, they said this is the most fantastic thing they have heard in months. So they were very happy about it, and they supported it. And then we, as a Czech Banking Association, we started to talk to the government, but saying, look, we try to do something, but even if we buy 2,000-3,000 apartments and we provide it, that is not solving the whole issue. Like you need to create some policy to scale the solution, and we will be very happy a part of that. So this is our journey so far, and obviously I have to thank Erste Group, because it's a fantastic investor and shareholder. I think the affordable housing is in the DNA of the Austrian nation, and they really have understanding for that. So I think on one side we feel part of the responsibility in the country. On the other side, I think you have to have an enlightened investor that really understand that if you want to keep the long-term shareholder value growth, then it's not possible in a country that is falling apart.
Okay, so an investor that accompanies you in your journey and believes in the mission.
Yes.
It's fundamental. And Kęstutis, I'm coming back to you. And what are your thoughts on what Marek just shared? And what are the main issues Europe should focus on the S?
Well, it fits into two very short words, and that is fighting poverty. And fighting poverty is exactly S, because fighting poverty is so much in it. There is so much in it in those two short words. That,
can I even better, fighting inequality, or just poverty?
Well, look, inequality is potentially one of the big contributors to.
Okay.
Okay, so let's think about those, let's say, 30% population of those 1 in 3 people who are essentially lacking decent income, decent life. And then you have the collection of all the S parameters. And thinking about what you just said, the housing, the housing issue, it is also maybe a symptom of the whole problem. Because look what you just said, 150, you are so proud of it. And I think you are doing great work. But that's like having scope 1 emissions and scope 3 emissions, yeah? If I can use this parallel. So you may have 150 houses, 2,000 houses, whatever.
Exactly. Yeah.
And at the same time, across the country, there are millions of, let's say, unaffordable houses waiting for their occupants. And there is this huge divide between people who have the capital to build houses for sale, for speculative rent and so on, and those who cannot afford it. Yeah? And I think there is no way we can speak about S without touching the political economy at its root. Yeah? How this economic system is constructed, how it works, for whom it works, who gets the best piece of the pie, and how it's then distributed. Yeah? Of course, then taxation, jurisdictions with certain features for hiding money, briberies, corruption, those things come to mind. Yeah? And as it was nicely said today, it's not disclosed. Huh? There is no way we can expect that some company will write in its sustainability report that we did this or that, and these things only come later when it becomes a major scandal. Yeah? So let's say, in my vision, I think that we have to select what's our course to change the whole system, not to just think about, okay, look, we have dirty world around us, dirty economic system which is full of exploitation and injustice. And then we suddenly planned some plans like these little gated societies of happy people who suddenly, for some reason, are sustainably financed and sustainably living, but in the end it will come back to all of them, to all of us, yeah? Because there is no escape. There is only one Earth, there is only one society, and there is no way to escape. While I'm told that rich always escape. They have this tendency to flee. When something happens, they board a private jet and they go to New Zealand. Huh? But where do normal Czech people, let's say ordinary Czech people?
Yes, and I think you come back to the point that when we say the only scaling of the solution is together with the government. There is no other way how the finance sector, we say we are ready to finance the Czech, I have to admit that the discussions are very productive. I have to say that it's one of the 5 pillars of the government. And they found they found 10 billion Czech crowns, which is, let's say, 400 million euro from the resilience and recovery facility to start building the projects with municipalities. But then you say, okay, if you scale it, we want to build as a government, and that's where we have the discussion, you need to build 100,000 apartments. And if an average apartment costs 200,000 euro, yeah, then you multiply it and say, well, you can never find this money in the state budget. And then we come as a finance sector, as we sit here, and we say we help you to find where the money are. And they are in the European Investment Bank, they are in the Czech banking sector, they are in the pension funds, and they are in the reserves of the insurance companies. And we have enough money to finance the policy and the projects you will prepare, if it's prepared together, hand in hand. And I think this is coming to the point that we believe that the scaling of the social solution and the issues is possible hand in hand with the government and the finance sector looking on a 20-year horizon. Yeah?
Yes, and also it's about changing a bit the practices. So it's, as you said, you're creating new housing that is great, affordable housing that will have an impact to a lot of people, but then there's a big gap on the market on all the other housing. Yeah. And so I wanted to bring in Barbara, because IKEA is looking at your practices globally, right? And your supply chains. And so tell us a bit about how you're integrating the S across your supply chain. Your sustainability practices, sorry.
So yes, you are right. We have like some global approach and some global KPIs, but what's even more important to be always locally relevant when speaking about the S. So how we always tackle the issue is that we map what are our vulnerable groups in the markets, and based on some data, based on cooperation with governments, but also with other NGOs and with universities, we try to understand what are the vulnerable groups that need our help. And our help, I mean the help of a home furnishing company, because I think it's very important to realize that any company, whether it's a bank or it can be a FMCG company, they should always try to look for what's material for their business so they can integrate us in a relevant way. And for us, it's home furnishing, because we are obviously providing household appliances and furniture. And then it all comes to housing as well, but to equipping the homes. But from the S point of view, what's material for us and for our customers, but also for our employees, it's that a home should be also safe, not only nicely furnished with IKEA furniture, but it should be a safe place. And also, currently, we've identified a very vulnerable group, which is refugees. Because obviously our country has welcomed more than 500,000 people from Ukraine. And with this specific vulnerable group, we need to look for the access to homes. So we need to solve the first step. And then how we are tackling the issues as such is that firstly, you always need to understand what's your own homework and what internal policies you can do for your own company, for your own employees. Then you can start digging around what's the material immediate help that I can provide. Is this finances or is it just some furniture? And then we always try to go to the midterm approach and midterm strategy. And I couldn't agree more with you, Marek, that we always go to government as well, and there are like hundreds of different companies who ask them for something. But I must say that the topic of S is a popular topic, even for the discussion with municipalities and governments, because then we can have a really nice dialogue, okay, what the private sector can do to contribute also to your goals. So we are always trying to find a long-term and mid-term solution, which I can give you a concrete example in terms of the refugee crisis, for example. So we first provided a lot of material help, we equipped some of the refugee centers and shelters and long-term housing, but now we are looking into the integration topic. So how we can provide language courses for refugees, how we can provide upskilling courses, how we can scale up capacities in daycare centers through our furnishing, and how we can also raise the debate. So it all comes to the S and how we implement it in our industry.
Thank you. And which kind of indicator, just to bring back to some of the conversation, do you have specific indicator and data that you look at?
Yes, but it is hard to collect data because it always comes, even in business and even in finance sector, what's like the return on investment, right? Or what's the business case? And you can't tell with social because it's like, it's so hard to measure. So we follow GRI standard reporting, so that's something that we can refer to also in measuring our impact. But then we developed our internal tool. It's called Social Impact, and it has like it's a pyramid of 3 layers how we connect to people. The bottom of the pyramid, it's like some material support. So okay, maybe we provided 200 people with some beds and mattresses. But then we go a bit up and we go to the improved situation, meaning that we've equipped the whole crisis apartment. So we really improved a living situation for a family that's, for example, fleeing a violent relationship. And then we go to the tip of the pyramid and it's transformation of someone's life. And it could be an example of our program Skills for Employment. This is upskilling program for refugees coming to our country. We provide language courses, upskilling courses, and it's really something that can transform someone's life. So we are trying to look at these figures and always have the dialogue with the NGOs, understanding how many people we can impact. But it is hard to follow, and we are also still at the beginning. But I would say that start collecting the data as soon as possible. It's what can be very beneficial in the long run.
And when you're doing your sustainability program and transformation, are you looking also at the S and the people that are part of the transformation? Like, so embedding social indicator while you're looking at more sustainable product, more sustainable?
Yes, as well. Then it comes to the supply chain. But obviously we can, for example, I don't know, if we want to stop selling one product and replace it with another, right? So it's always important to look into, okay, so are these people going to lose their jobs? Can we upskill them somehow? How we can enable that the transformation is just and for everyone.
Thank you so much. And actually, I'm going back to Marek because there's a couple of questions for you. So we'll just make it as interactive with the audience. Since have you talked to your members about launching an EU renovation loan together with central bank and recovery funds? And then the second is the return on capital for the bank when it comes to financing affordable housing lower than other projects? And if yes, who financed the gap?
It's always, with the bankers, you always start with the second question, and this is the finance.
Perfect.
Obviously, if you, there are 3 points why we can realize this project. The first one is if you buy in scale, so you save money. The second is efficiency of the building because you own hundreds or lower thousands of apartments. And the third one is we have a definitely much lower margin on the rent. What is our targeted ROE? It's definitely not what we make on banking. This is our ESG strategy. It's lower, it's defined by our shareholder, and it's a long-term business. You know, maybe the biggest challenge is that you have the controlling and finance people in the bank looking on the next quarter results, next year results. But if you do affordable housing, then you have to look on the return indicates. Yeah? And then you come back to the shareholder understanding if you don't help to solve the biggest social issues of the country and the country falls apart and you leave 35% people behind, that's what Kęstutis said. And we see it on the accounts, you know. You don't have to percentage it's 35% because we see that 35% of people have zero on their account every month. We are the bank, right? They cannot cheat us. We are better than statistical office. Then you understand if you don't start helping, then obviously these people will start voting for the extreme left or extreme right, and I think this situation is far worse than what we are imagining. So obviously, if you talk to the finance people, it's not what they imagine the next quarter to hit, but if you look on the long-term value of the shareholder, I think this is the only way how to keep the environment in a way that the bank is prospering and the shareholder interests are growing in time. And that's why I'm coming back to the point, you need an enlightened investor that is with here for, that has the target in decades, and I think Erste is in the region for 200 years already. And you cannot really do it with some private equity fund looking to sell the bank in 3 years. So it's lower than our standard business. And the first question, please.
The question was about creating a renovation loan together with the central bank and recovery fund.
This is another discussion, because when we talk to the government and we say, if you want to build 100,000 apartments and that should be the target to help to solve the issue, you need a policy, right? Maybe you want to comment on that. And you know, there are 3 parties involved, and the government it's a very complex system. So, but I think in the autumn I'm quite optimistic there will be some first good news. And we talk with them, okay, this is the new housing. If you don't get the supply, obviously we don't change too much. We need to build new houses. But in the meanwhile, you have people in your own in the existing houses that are old, and even if you give them the subsidies from EU to lower the energy costs, yeah, you still need, let's say, around 15,000 euro of your own equity, and 85% just don't have that. So now we are talking with the government that they will provide money from the modernization fund, which is under the Enviro Resort ministry. They have around 14 billion Czech euros, so 300 billion Czech crowns, to lower the energy cost. And maybe, and that was announced on Thursday, we can give this money to the banks and to the Sparkassen, which is savings banks, as a deposit. So with a limited profit, we can distribute it to people to repair the existing homes and to lower the energy levels. And I think this will be a fantastic thing to do.
Yes, Marek, I believe you really need many public policies, but there is one problem with that.
Yeah.
Because there are so many things which are deeply embedded in the economic system itself, that there are no policies which can change it. And I'm talking about the profit orientation. And when there is profit orientation, then the pie is distributed in a quite distorted way. And if I may comment on Barbora's example, Barbora, your company will never advertise buy less. You will create a company which is optimized both financially and both S-wide, criteria, optimum way, in your own bubble. And then you have so many other companies destined to grow, to build more factories, more stores, and so on, to grow, because that's the inherent quality of the capitalist system. So with this, you have optimized structures, which together, they are optimal in their own capacity, but together, they damage the earth. And as people in trade unions say, there are no jobs on that planet. There is this understanding already. And the problem is that we are split. We think that planet is something else than us humans. So it is very deep in so many different topics, mostly now framed under the notion of degrowth that only the brave dare to talk about.
No, in fact, Kęstutis, I wanted to ask you, this morning there was an interesting comment about not wanting to regulate and create over-regulate, and so not to create a social taxonomy, which seems to me, and I understand there were some good points made, that we need to leave for innovation and not over-regulate, but at the same time they feel there's a missing part, there's a missing pillar without a social clear taxonomy. What are your thoughts on that? And what more can the European Commission and the committee do in regards to this?
I would say I regret so much that now the public debate is split into two parts. The platform created by the Commission is now separate from the other group of people who work from the NGO side, who work on these things, and we know the issue with that. We know that was a split caused by the Gas and Nuclear Delegated Act. So I think that the Commission is doing right now what is politically possible, because we are political animals. Yeah, we know that there is an election next year. The Commission is not keen to go into too many battles. There are different problems already related to that election, and they are doing what is politically possible. But at the same time, we all know that we should not care too much about politics, because in the end, the result will not be about what is the EPP versus socialists. Is it victorious or not? No, we all lose because there is no real reform done in the, let's say, social economic complex of the European Union. So I really regret that there is no move to bring back these people. That's one thing. And I truly cannot say how disappointed I am that in the new platform, there is no more group on social taxonomy, as if the case is closed. Huh? It's incredible that after the great report published in February 2022, and also I want to advertise a little bit here. This is another great paper produced by this finance center, by the organizers of this conference, and that's a great read. If you ever wondered what you should start from, I think you should start from this paper, Busting 5 Myths. So there is enough theoretical material to build strong policy around it. But because of these political cycles and because of the incapability of the committee, of the commission, we are now stuck in nowhere, unfortunately. Do you think we cannot create proper metrics how to measure social progress? I think there are already good examples. So there are so many initiatives, there are so many NGOs working on that, and there are so many also business initiatives. So all these things that we don't have data, we don't have enough whatever, all these things are just excuses, I think, for as long as the music plays, let's do business as usual. And we sometimes only have several brave people who go beyond that business as usual point and engage in real impact investment.
Thank you. And I fundamentally agree that there is a need on the social, and I'm quite disappointed on the social taxonomy, but I do think there are some practical tools that we can refer people to where you can get started on. The paper is a good one. We worked with ICFC on it and gives a really practical place where you can go to look at data from NGO to rep risk to Refinitiv, GRI, SASB, what are the right indicators that you can integrate? Which brings me to the core of what the social issues are, and we shouldn't leave the conversation without discussing this, is supply chain. And Barbara, we were talking about the work you're doing with your suppliers. That is very important that, just tell us a bit more how you're doing, and then I'll ask a bit. In the meantime, please ask some questions so we can continue the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I would actually just very briefly like to react to Kęstutis' comment to correct a bit the idea of big companies, because we do regularly encourage our customers to consume less and not to buy new furniture, because the idea of degrowth is essential for our future and for many companies to understand whether we become relevant and whether we really want to be committed to our claims that we want to reach some of the goals. We need to take this into account. So it's a bit untapping the potential of reusing services and so on. So just maybe we can discuss afterwards. But we are more into the E right now with the resources of the planet. But obviously then it would also, the degrowth would also impact our suppliers, right? Because our suppliers are very much often dependent on us being an exclusive partner, so it's all still hard to understand what will be the best way. Nevertheless, the supplier chain, it's an important part of our business, and since 2000, early 2000, we have our own code of conduct called IWay that we make mandatory for all suppliers that want to work with IKEA. The code of conduct is undergoing constant development, so just last year we relaunched like 6th version that is in line with the SDG goals. And we require our suppliers to fulfill some must requirements that are requirements that has to be by no means always confirmed by the beginning of the cooperation. But then we work with the suppliers, and I think it's quite important part of the development that they have 1 year to fulfill the basic requirements that are also mandatory, but then we have the whole department of sustainability developers who are working with the suppliers in the long run and trying to make them advanced and excellent and really becoming amazing suppliers that are zero waste, that are taking care of the biodiversity, and also a lot about the social issues. So that's how we work with the suppliers, and what's also crucial is to share the best practice, because obviously we give them money in exchange for their products, but we are not their mother company, for example. So we can't really require you have to take care of victims of domestic abuse because we do it. But then it's about bringing the topic and making it material to them, so creating the business case for them. Okay, maybe we care about victims of domestic abuse, so maybe you can do the same because it will improve your productivity of the women who can be victims of domestic abuse, and so on. And we also share the best practices and all the toolkits that we've developed on our own. So it's about really being transparent, being there, and trying to improve what they are doing.
Yes, and we were discussing before how, there's a great report that's been shared, published by Shift, which I think is a bit the center of excellence on the S, and if you want, where it's really saying how to embed the UN Guiding Principle in your due diligence processes. And we're discussing of the importance of shared responsibility, right? Because if in the end, the company, the reporting, it becomes a policing state where big company just asks for data and police their supplier. We're not going to shift the shift we need in order to really look at inequality. And you were sharing some of the challenges and the opportunity and best practices that you're doing it with your suppliers in that.
Yeah, no, thank you for mentioning it, because we totally agree, and we believe that the key success factor to even develop our suppliers in really setting a transparent and trustworthy relationship and having a constant dialogue. Because what we know in manufacturing, and it's no different for furnishing business as well, sometimes obviously the partners pushing for deadlines and quantities, and then the suppliers, they contact some sub-suppliers who are not maybe willing to fulfill the requirements, or they don't even know them properly, and then what can happen is the violation of human rights, for example, which also obviously happens also across our value chain. But how we are trying to avoid that is to having the conversation with our suppliers and really building the trust that, okay, if you are not able to meet the deadlines, just share it with us, and it's about the shared responsibility you said. Then we know about it and we can tackle it together. But the solution is not that, for example, once the supplier has some issue, then we cut the cooperation, because we wouldn't solve anything. He would go to a different company that doesn't have any requirement. So it's better to work with these suppliers and actually teach them and educate them what you can do, how you can overcome the challenges, and how you can improve for a better future.
Yeah, so which is a principle also in the financial sector. So there's a big debate on engagement and disengagement, responsible disengagement. So I agree that fundamentally it's working with supplier, ensuring also the costs are not bared by the suppliers in the long run, because that's the big risk. Marek, can I come back to you? Yeah. And what do you think are some of the lessons that you've learned in terms of integrating the S in your story, and what more the banking sector can do to really embed the S?
I'm really thinking still about the Kęstutis question about when is the right time to systematically change something. And there are so many problems every day in the government that I think it's only time in a big crisis. That is my conclusion, and we are in a big crisis, at least in the affordability of housing in Czech Republic. You need 15 times yearly multiple of household income to buy an average 65 square meter apartment. This is the worst. And I think when the government saw 100,000 people protesting on the main square, they understood, I mean, this is not good. We have to do something. And this is the time when you get aligned around some common purpose. But then everyone starts asking, so what should we do? What should we do?
Yeah, but you
let's
never question
wait,
the basic assumption that you have, that every family has to buy a house. Because that's good for IKEA's business, that's good for mortgage providers.
What we came to the government with was that we believe that the municipalities should start building their own housing stock, and this is the problem. But how do you learn how to be a partner with the government? I think you learn by showing by example, and that's what we are doing. Like we have contacted 140 municipalities. We went to talk to 57 of the mayors, really deep dive, and we asked them, why are you not building your own apartments? And they told us these are the three main reasons.
Housing cooperatives. Huh?
Exactly. And then we came back to the government and say, this is what we believe you should do, because we talked to the municipalities.
But then if you let people organize themselves without your participation, are you not out of business? So,
no, banking has been here for 500 years, no worries.
Yeah, in fact, actually, Marek, one of the questions from the public is, do you think more banks should focus on these issues? And what about the developers?
I think you come to the point that first you say, you should reform something, like let's make a reform of affordability of housing, and we try to add our value by doing the things that the politicians don't like, and that is going into the field, find out what is really there, like what is the real problem and what are internationally the solutions, and then you come back to their nice offices and tell them this is what is happening out there. And then the second you say, okay, how we can make it happen, because you all fight against each other and they want to make a common purpose, so let's go for a beer, that's the Czech way. And then they ask the third question is, and who will pay for that? And they say, okay, let's talk. We are the finance business. We can find where are the long-term money, and actually they are in pension funds, they are in insurance companies, they are in the EIB. So if you make a cooperative, EIB will finance it. But will you make a cooperative, or will you keep fighting against each other? And I think this is something that is here not to start fighting against each other, but how to find a common purpose, the finance sector, the government, the municipalities, and to align around the common purpose. I think that's what we are trying to do right now.
Yeah, and Marek, can I ask you, when you're doing, which I think you bring up very good points, and it's when you're doing it, when you're looking at, are you integrating social issue within that? So within the suppliers you're going to pick, how the workers are going to be paid and all of that, or is just mission focus on affordable housing?
So far that's my responsibility, but there are some colleagues that has much broader one, and maybe they will answer the question better.
Okay,
I'm
perfect.
more focused on the affordability issue.
And Kęstutis, I do agree that government should do better, and the Europeans should do better. So what is your advice? I see what you're saying, that is a cycle, there's no political momentum, but on the S, on the taxonomy, on the due diligence, what can you or the committee do more to achieve, or maybe there's some topic we should focus on to make it less burdensome?
Well, I think that we are already on the good path, so to say, but we are very slow. And all the initiatives you mentioned, and also those that are probably still somewhere on the drawing board, this will help us to transition. But at the same time, the weight of business as usual is so high, so large, that it will drag us down. And I know I was a bit provocative today with both colleagues, but it's allow me to finish, like to not to damage our relationship, okay? In this way, that indeed, like there is this saying about plan is nothing, but planning is everything. Huh? So even if you start to think about those three big target groups, like workers and users / consumers and community society. So if you have people who are serious about that in your big organizations, then it means we start implementation, at least from some small beginnings, but it will grow. Yeah? So even if you probably will not achieve a lot, with your limited efforts, the planning, the being in it, will have its effect. But I'm really worried that what is good on a small scale, when there is no, let's say, political will for a real reform. Drop out that GDP metrics, yeah, forget it, just simply, yeah, like go on the degrowth path, do the real reforms.
Yeah.
Then we can move, yeah, some reality in sustaining our real, comparatively prosperous future. Otherwise, Europe will be simply washed away by mass migration, which will be based on climate issues. Yeah, and that's not so far away. It's already happening.
Yes, and I fully agree with, and I'm a big supporter of the shift that needs to happen. But bottom line, practitioner needs something practical to start with. And we have a tendency of talking about it. That's why some people that's why a lot of financial markets and company get scared about the S, because as soon as you talk about the S, you need to talk about macro system. But there are some practices as responsible engagement with suppliers, paying a fair living wage, because you were mentioning about living wage. So I don't know if you want, because those are practices, there's more, but they can be scaled, right? In terms of paying living wages. So. Were you talking about that, or am I?
Yeah, okay. about the IWay.
Okay.
It's about our requirements that the must requirement for our suppliers is always to provide the minimum legal wage, but then for the basic, which is like within the course of 12 months, the supplier needs to cover the other expenses to cover the living wage. So it's like how you balance between, if that's what you were asking for.
Yeah. So. Yes, so it's trying to provide. Yeah. Don't know if did you request the suppliers to pay their living wage, or yeah, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Through the basic evaluation of the IWay. So we have the different levels. So we always start with the minimum legal wage, but then we build up.
Perfect. And sorry, I have this question that I don't know if it's completely relevant to you, so they say it's for you, but it's like, what tools does IKEA use to map Scope 3 emissions?
Mm-hmm. It's not connected to us.
Exactly, but you can maybe get the S into the conversation.
We have internal developed tools, and we do the aggregated data collection. So based on the Scope 3 emissions, we look always at the value chain. So we look obviously into the supply chain, but then also we look into the customers, how, for example, they are wasting our products, and about all the commuting patterns and so on. So far, we always benchmark the data based on the customers, about the sold product, about the products produced, and then we aggregate it based on the global warming potential per different materials, for example, or per different waste treatments in the country. I don't know if I should go really into depth because it's a bit off topic, but I'm happy to talk about it after the session.
Thank you, Barbara. And we got a few very interesting questions about your degrowth comment. So what is the EU doing about preparing for degrowth? And isn't the European Green Deal going totally against degrowth philosophy?
Well, we have a degrowth conference today in the European
Parliament.
I saw. That's a great beginning. Yeah? And last week I was in Brussels for Brussels Economic Forum, and there was a storming group of activists, which in the middle of debate, with Vice President of the Commission, Valdis Dombrovskis, present, they got their message. Stop talking about growth, degrowth, and so on. So it was a mess, of course, for a few minutes. But in the end, it was so difficult to go back to the usual debate. Yeah? Everybody was visibly shaken, except Valdis Dombrovskis, who is always very focused. And I think time will come, yeah? If we have more talk about that, and if we have supportive group of members of the European Parliament, then probably it will come to some conclusion, at least not only to focus on GDP as the main metrics, but to employ other metrics as well. And then that's how we come back to the S, yeah? Because that metrics is essentially about people. It's not about amount of goods we produce, right? Measured in financial means.
Maybe from my side, I have a different point of view, but this is democracy, so we can talk about it.
Please, make it spicy.
When we analyze in the history how people reach higher prosperity, that was always that you have clear rules, you have freedom, and you have free markets. So people with great ideas were trying to grow productivity. They went for the allocation of the capital, and they were building prosperity. That's why we live such a nice life in Europe.
Marek, that was 1980s.
Then you come to the point that in a long term, because of the taxation, some people got super rich and some people got left behind. And this is the S we are now talking about, how not to leave so many people behind. And I think this is what we are trying to do, but it's a discussion that the banking sector has to go hand in hand with the government to see how we can create programs that basically we protect capitalism in a way that all the people feel benefits. And I understand your frustration, because we see that 1/3 of people believe that capitalism is not bringing them better life, and they're looking for some extreme solutions. And I think this is something that is the S, that we should find the solution together with the government, how the people will have prosperity also in the lower third of the nation. And the banks cannot say we are not a part of the discussion. We are definitely part of the financial system. We are the beating heart of capitalism, and we take responsibility for the growth. And we should discuss with the government about how the distribution should lift all the communities out of the property. But once we are talking that we should change the system, that's a tough discussion, at least for us bankers.
Your arguments would hold firm if there would be 4 Earths or 5 Earths. We are on a finite planet, so that talk was good for 1980s.
Okay,
but not now.
We had our history of trying experiments, in some extreme way.
I know, I come from the same background.
In this part of the region, so we know none of the extremes are good, and I'm looking for a really balanced way.
Can I just bring another point so that we are not only European focused? There is another bridge, there's another gap in the thing, is that unintended consequences, and there's a question to the developed markets, no? So there are economies that are going to be affected by the regulation imposed by the EU. And one of the people in the audience is asking, and this I ask to all of you, but is it possible to build a bridge between all these requirements from the EU and supporting other regions? And I have the expertise, we do a lot of events around the globe, and there is a lot of turmoil in SMEs and markets like such India, Colombia, Thailand, Malaysia, where these requirements will be very difficult to implement, and the burden will go on the suppliers in those markets and in those economies. So I don't know if there's any answer that I don't know if there's an answer to this from your perspective.
No, I don't honestly. I've been struggling with that a lot in my previous job, because I was working in the fashion industry, and you have many countries in the developing world that are dependent solely on manufacturing fashion products. And then you are facing the pressure from the consumers, like, I want local designers and I want everything to be made in the Czech Republic and in Europe. But then obviously you have the price, which is also set in a bad manner and causing the issues in the developing world. But then you have to acknowledge that this is usually the only stream of income for these people. So is it really the right solution to localize everything? Or is it rather better to outsource the production in the developing countries, but rather educate the developing countries and setting the standards, for the example of the living wage and for better practices that are more environmentally friendly? So obviously we deal with that also within IKEA supply chain. We are coming with some requirements for the certification of our forests. It's something that I discussed in one of the breaks. And we are losing suppliers in the Czech Republic because we don't have sufficient amount of forests being certified with the certification that we require. So it's a very complex issue. I don't have the right answer to it.
No, but I think that's what I wanted people to be aware, that this is a very important component, that we are not imposing some colonial approach to human rights again, and making sure that the global south is involved and has a voice in the legislation we are developing and the standards we are developing across the board, to ensure there's not unintended consequences on their economy, etc. And I think you mentioned there's a duty to educate. I think there's a duty also, again, I go back to share responsibility and share of prices and paying correctly for the goods that we're buying. But I know that there are only 3 minutes left. I don't know if you wanted to add anything to these questions that Barbara responded quite well to. But
I think you will like it. This is nothing about the ESG, that's the global economy.
Yeah, well, there is
I'll
no...
give you
I can have,
30
I can have
seconds and
the
then
finance
I wrap
view.
it.
I can have the finance view. I'm sure my colleague will have the political view. From the finance point of view, you know, we are in US, we are running huge deficits. Nearly 1/3 of the budget is not covered by income. And, you know, they're hitting this financing wall, and if you look on Europe, so some financial markets will have to buy the bonds the government issue, and the question is, what will be the interest rate? And we have seen it in UK, that this is one of the major global challenges of if financial markets will believe they will one day get their money back. And in London, we have seen what can happen in the Western world. And the second is this polarization of the world, and you see this one block of China and Russia challenging Europe and UK, and I think this will leave us, I think much more it will push us to let's not fight within the Europe. I mean, we really not need to start cooperating, and I feel I have a very good relation. I like the discussion, but I think I still feel that we should keep on fighting somehow. And my belief is, if we don't start working together, we cannot overcome this huge challenge that is ahead of us. And I think China, Brazil, Russia, and India are going to challenge us in a way that we have to start looking how to cooperate to solve the issues.
It's not for the sake of fighting or not fighting, but just harsh reality, what we have. If we do not stop exploiting these people, simply, then think of the future when 100 million of Eastern Asia climate refugees come to European. So it's time to act now to make common, I don't know, in the context of the loss and damage, in the context of all the other climate financing, to make common effort to avoid the most disastrous scenarios when 100 million people or 200 million people are simply displaced because of our CO2 emissions, right? So at this point, our talk about what's globally going to happen is in our own interest. And then probably you can have your financial markets also prospering.
So one last, and then we have to go. So we promised some practical. So how do we end this on the S? If the audience want to get started, who would you refer them to? Which tools or any big tip that you like? Your biggest lesson learned from integrating the S. Barbara, do you want to start?
Yes, and I would suggest stakeholder engagement, at least from the business perspective. It's always, because even within the sustainability team or within the management team, you'll never find an expert who would be really like good at the social issues, right? So it's always good to rely on the NGOs, on the municipalities, engage the stakeholders, understand what's material for your area of expertise, where you can help, and then just do it. I would also suggest focus on the internal practices, because it's crucial. It's very hard to do something externally, but not do the first job internally and provide the right policies. And then follow up, try to drive a systematic change, because it's also possible from the private sector, and collect data, because it's important.
Sorry. Marek, go ahead. I'm so sorry.
I think our lesson was first find what's really where you have the experts for the look on what are the biggest social issues of the country and where your experts in the bank are. The second, start showcasing, because without the real example, you don't have the experience, you don't even have the rights to talk about what should be the solution. And third, start scaling with the government in a partner discussion, because all the infrastructure project needs financing, and that's the role of the finance sector. So align with EIB and the banking sector, the pension funds, and try to in a partner way to find a solution for the social issue.
Thank you.
And
practical.
Yes. If you can, start today by transforming your financial gains-oriented financial institution into impact investment institution. Then you will probably have something to tell your grandchildren.
Yes, and I think on that is a good ending note. I would say it's also like more than also impact investing, because impact investing, I think, creates confusion. I just want to say, find what is material, what you can really make change on, and for the people, and don't create an initiative that is a sidekick of the work you're doing. You're doing work on your emission and scope 1, scope 2, scope 3 for climate. Embed the social in what you're doing across all the work you're doing. And I think that's the best. And even if it's a minimal denominator or paying all the workers in a certain way or ensuring there's good practice on their work environment, that would really make an impact and avoid polarization and the growth of inequality. That's my, I don't know, I came in as a moderator, but that's fine. And thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the discussion. Okay, I can hear myself now. Thank you, Giulia, and all the speakers for the passionate and very practical discussion as well, with some practical solutions. So that's good to hear. And I think this was a beautiful. It just completed the picture, the full picture of today's discussions. I think really nicely, because we are touching on, ESG and carbon a lot in the morning, and reporting standards and different topics. And I think S definitely was one of the main puzzles or one of the main pillars of this discussion. So I think it's a really nice closure for the main panels today. But don't go home yet, because two things. First one, there's one more short session on sustainability in geopolitics, which I think is actually quite interesting. And the second thing, there's drinks after, which it's a nice combination of the things. So
Shall we
yes,
go?
to get to the drinks, you need to also listen to the session, I've been told, which is a very fair rule. So thank you to the speakers, and we'll take a half an hour break now, and we'll see each other in 30 minutes. Thank you. Oh, yes.